Hi again. We've now covered 5 of the 6 areas that we had originally spoke about. We've talked about the influencers on your business. We've gone into strategy and what and how your strategic value proposition needs to change. We went into marketing and we talked about the paradigm shifts that we're beginning to see out of top agencies. Then we went into sales and we did 2 things in sales. One, we talked about some major shifts within the sales environment that are important. And then we also unpacked the sales prototype that you can use within your own business. We also talked about how execution is actually not standalone. It's part of sales. It's part of delivering on the promise. So now we want to talk about culture, and we want to talk about how your culture is going to enable your business and how it makes that virtuous perpetuating cycle so that it continually renews itself. Now, when we looked at the research and we looked at what our takeaways were on how companies were doing this successfully, there are really 12 takeaways. This video is going to focus on the first 6. The first takeaway that we had was that there was no value hierarchy. Now, what I mean by that is that it didn't matter if you were an operations person, a finance person, an HR person, if you were the owner, if you were the second in command, if you were brand new. Everyone was always treated the same. Titles did not mean anything. Tenure did not mean anything. Everyone had the same level of respect for each other. And you could tell that as soon as you walked in the way that people engaged with each other, in the way that people talked with each other. People were very, very inclusive in what they did, always. And they did not turn away opportunity just because they didn't feel like someone didn't have enough experience in it. They trusted each other because there was no reason that they would have hired that person if they didn't have the capability to be amazing at what they did and to improve the entire agency. The second takeaway is that people in these agencies always focused on strengths. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that people weren't trying to continually improve and trying to strengthen up and shore up their weaknesses, but they were focused on what they did really well in their day-to-day roles. I'll give you an example from one of the agencies we looked at. What they found was that there were a certain type of people that loved being out in front of the customers. They loved dealing with them day to day. They loved managing and cultivating and nurturing that relationship. For others, that freaked them out. The last thing that they wanted to do was be in front of a customer. But what we were finding is that many of these agencies, they didn't look at these nuances, and they would take someone who loved to be out in front of the customer and they'd put them in more of an operational role, or they would take someone who hated being out in front of people and they would put them into a sales role. What we also saw is that in many cases there were just salespeople, there was just agents or advisors, and they were expected to do the full gambit of the work. So what you were seeing in a lot of these places is because the salesperson typically didn't have this really strong attention to detail in paperwork, you were seeing backups in certain parts of the processes within these agencies. So instead, what this agency had done is they made sure that people were focused on their strengths, and then they made sure that they worked together to enable the process to flow seamlessly. To further that example a little bit more, the salesperson would take care of all of the customer relationship, but it was someone who really loved to be behind the scenes and to be an enabler, who handled all of that paperwork, who did all of the reservations. And so it was this constant dance between the salesperson and this operations person in order to make that trip possible. And they were almost like partners in the fact that when I think about maybe a police officer or a police crew, when you always see these movies where they have these very strong bonds and relationships because they spend that time together and they can't be successful without each other. That is what was coming forward, and that was what we were seeing at this agency. It was really, truly a differentiator for them. The next is that there's this very open and transparent culture, meaning nothing was hidden. So everyone felt like their voice could be heard, and they felt like they did not have to walk on eggshells or like they had to hold back what they were feeling. When problems existed, they sat down and maturely discussed them. They heard both sides, and then they reminded themselves that they're all going for the same cause. They're all pushing towards the same North Star. They all have the same wants and needs. Now, the way that they may go there may be different routes, and that's what's often was causing that tension. So by looking and focusing on the things that were most important, they were able to align themselves towards that common goal, and a lot of those things were settled. So how could you do that? Are there things that you maybe want to be more open about? more transparent about. Maybe there's more communications that you need to be putting out about some sort of change that you've implemented within the business. The next is they aligned personalities and expertise. Now, this is more of a inward to outward facing, meaning when a client came in or a customer would come in, what they would do is they would make sure that the personality, if possible, aligned with that customer. So what they had was often different destinations that they specialized in or different expertise that they had. They made sure that there was coverage, and that in that coverage, they could handle both of those types of personalities. Because someone that comes in and who's very analytical, they're going to want much more precise and specific details about the trip. And for some people, that would drive them crazy. And so matching those personalities and matching that expertise was a huge benefit for many of these different organizations. The next is that they were results oriented. Everyone knew exactly the place that they had, the part that they played within the business, and how they were moving the needle, whether that was based on revenue, whether that was based on leads, whether that was based on time, whatever it may have been. They were very results driven, and they made sure that they were constantly improving. They were always using those results and using those metrics and using what they found to drive improvement, to make themselves better, to make the process better, to make the customer experience better. Are you being deliberate with the metrics that you have? Are you even using metrics to measure the success that you're having with your customers? And I would ask you to think about, what are those things that you have within your business that offer the most value to customers? And do you know what impact that has? Can you measure that? And if you can, then you can start to improve that, and you can make sure that you're constantly delivering in those areas. And the last one for this video is they were professional. I didn't walk into a single one of these top agencies and not feel like they were put together, that they were seamless, and that they worked together, that the way that they handled all of their interactions, the way that they handled customers was with the utmost respect and with the utmost tenacity of follow-up, making sure that they had their integrity intact, that when they said something that they were going to do that. They were very professional. So with that, that takes us to the end of our first 6 cultural principles. Take a look at some of these and ask yourself how you may be able to take some of these and implement that, or be more deliberate about that within your business. You don't have to do it all at once. There may be some of these that you're already doing. Can you strengthen that? Can you make sure that that's embodied within what you're doing? I want to close with a quick story. In our office in Denver, it's a very open environment, meaning there's not many walls that you're going to see. There's couches that are along this long wall. There's different groupings of desks, but it's all very open. And I travel a bit, and I was noticing that when I would come back and I would travel, I have a team that's very bubbly and very outgoing, but when I would be there, it was silent and it was quiet. And I would ask myself, I wonder why that is. And what I came to realize was that when I would be back from these trips, I'd be in such a mad dash to get all of this work done, to get caught up on things that I had missed while I had been traveling. And in that, what I had realized is I had set the tone for the group and made them think that that's how they had to respond and that's how they had to be when I was in the office. What I learned from that is that although you may have a cultural principle that you find important, you may actually find that the intention and the actuality of it are different, and that they're separate. So not only do you need to think about these, but think about and make sure that the way that you want it to come off and the communication that you have is the same as the action that you drive. Thank you.